Bernie Bros, have I got some bad news for you? Listen, I understand you're so enthused about the democratic socialism that you're ready to put people who don't support democratic socialism into the re-education camps or the gulags and all that stuff. But the bad news is, your guy, your Bernie, the guy with all the finger waving and stuff, he doesn't want to win. I've got the proof. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle on the candidate who was born to lose. Brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. All right, gentlemen, this has kind of been nagging at me for a while, and I came up with just a couple of examples that sort of brought this into focus for me this morning. And then there's another example going way back that I'll mention here shortly. But in case you don't know the latest with Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, just to set the stage, Joe Biden's a front runner. If somebody doesn't knock him down between now and South Carolina, he's probably going to be the nominee. So you need a candidate that's going to go for the jugular, right? That's going to kick him in the crotch, that's going to rip his heart out like that guy in Indiana Jones and become the new front runner. That guy's not Bernie Sanders. Listen, Sanders supporter Zephyr Teachout, not exactly a household name, but she published a column in the Guardian, a British newspaper, a few days ago, detailing Joe Biden's history of corruption, how he's been all cozy with health insurers, with the credit card industry, and all of this stuff. How his family's gotten so rich off of his vice presidency and stuff. And the headline was great: middle class Joe Biden has a corruption problem. It makes him a weak candidate. Well, Sanders was confronted with this by CBS News on Sunday, and you would think, man, this is my moment, right? This guy is too corrupt to be president. And instead, here's what Sanders said. This is an exact quote that I copied and pasted, so you know I'm getting it right here. He told CBS News, "It is absolutely not my view that Joe is corrupt in any way, and I'm sorry that op-ed appeared." He went on, he said, "If anyone knows me, what I believe is we need a serious debate in this country on issues, as if corruption isn't an issue. We don't need to demonize people who may disagree with us, unless, of course, they're Republicans or conservatives." Scott, let's go to you first. You know, Bernie is famous for his fiery stump speeches, but where's the fire in the belly on this guy?
It does strike you as odd because it's almost like he's got a tentative candidacy. He's kind of keeping his options open. He's 112 years old, and he's still going at this as if he's like, well, if this doesn't work out, then maybe I'll have an opportunity in the White House. You know, it's like, what's he actually thinking about this? The other possibility that you can posit is that he legitimately doesn't think that Joe Biden has a corruption problem, and he thinks that this is just an effort to bring down the Democratic frontrunner, and he wants to be positioned as a good party guy, and thinking worst case scenario, if Biden is brought down, it won't be because of him, and his hands will be clean. Nobody will be angry at him. But he's still, for a guy who speaks frankly on apparently everything and doesn't care what people think of him, it does seem odd. When I was running for county executive years ago, a guy I met with for the first time, it turned out to be a good friend, said to me, he kind of assessed the situation I was in and said, "You're an unknown running against an incumbent who is well entrenched in his party, and nobody in your party even knows you, and you're going to do this. What are you going to do to take him down? How are you going to distinguish yourself? How are you going to, because just being the Republican in the race is not going to be enough to do it." And, he brought up a very good point. And up to that point, I was thinking in terms of, well, I'm going to speak honestly about my policies and the reforms required in government, and and all of that stuff is very important. But at some point, you not only have to get hired, you've got to get the leader fired. And in this case, Joe Biden is the leader in the clubhouse already, even though the Iowa polls right now show a pretty even balance between Joe Biden, Elizabeth Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, and Bernie. I said Elizabeth Sanders, Bernie Warren. Yeah, I've done enough talking for now.
Are you sure? Because I could hear a little bit more of that. That was an awful lot of fun. Listen, please, just a little side note here. I don't want people reading too much into my analysis of the Sanders campaign like I'm some sort of supporter. Listen, I am a hard right libertarian conservative, and I would rather chew off my own forehead than suffer a Sanders presidency, and the same thing goes for all of these Democratic jokers. So please don't take it wrong. All right, Bill, let's go to you. Last week, I don't know if you watched the Democratic debate, but there was going to be this huge fireworks moment because it was revealed just a couple of days before the final debate before Iowa that Bernie Sanders apparently told Liz Warren in private back in 2015 that a woman could not win the election. And I'm watching the debate and I'm kind of sitting on the edge of my chair. Is the moderator going to bring this up? They got to bring this up. They got to bring this up. And sure enough, one of the moderators asked Bernie Sanders about this. And I'm thinking, if I'm the guy with the fire in my belly to be president, I would say something like, well, I didn't tell her a woman couldn't win the White House. I told her she couldn't win the White House because everybody knows this. She's just a terrible candidate. And that would have been a great moment. But instead, let me tell you what he actually said. He said, anybody that knows me knows it's incomprehensible. He did a complete denial. In 2015, I deferred, in fact, to Senator Warren. I stayed back. Senator Warren decided not to run. I did run afterwards. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million votes. How could anyone believe a woman couldn't become president? So he totally denied everything he said. And Liz Warren came back and said, of course, you said those things, and they were terrible and wrong. I got to tell you, Bill, it was a repeat from 2016 with Hillary Clinton in her emails. He was asked.
Yep, that was amazing.
Yeah, he was handed the knife, and the blade is just right by Hillary's throat in that debate, and he whiffed it then too. Is he? It's tough to ask this about a Democratic socialist, but is Bernie just in this for the money?
I have to tell you, do you remember Hillary's face when he said, nobody cares about the email?
Oh.
She looked like she'd just been delivered like 10 new Dalmatian puppies in a sack,
Now, in Hillary's case, she actually throws the sack in a river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders is I think there's two things that I find about Bernie Sanders. One of them is he's lazy. He's very lazy. He has never really had a job in his entire life. He's lived off of the women he's married and so on. He became mayor of Burlington, which I don't imagine is exactly 18-hour days. And so I think on some level, Bernie Sanders understands that if he actually wins this thing and is president, then he's going to have to do something. He's going to have to, put in some hours, which not only do I think he doesn't want to do, I don't think he can do. I think he knows he can't do it. And the other thing I think about Bernie Sanders is that I think he's a moral coward. And the reason I say that is because it's easy to demonize rich people and gin up a lot of envy and resentment and get people up to levels of violence, which is my topic this week on Right Angle One of. But he doesn't have the courage to live what he actually espouses. He has 3 houses now. He's just soaking up money from his tours and so on. Bernie Sanders has found a way to become a professional candidate, and it suits him very, very well. It's almost like it's a chance for him to get up and do like a daily cranky blog post, except he does it live. There's the things that bother me today. Just see the news today. And then he doesn't do anything. I hadn't really thought about it until you mentioned it, Steve. But the second you did on our backstage show, I said, yeah, he's absolutely right. Steve's absolutely right. He doesn't want to be president. He can't come out and say it. He wants to be a presidential candidate. And I will remind Scott Ott of what he might have said during the backstage show in regards to Bernie. You remember that, Scott?
Vaguely, now that you prompt me, it does sound like he is thinking that he'd like his future title to be Mr. Secretary,
Exactly.
that he's angling for a position in the Biden administration.
Right.
Now, that's a remark, a witticism, but I don't really believe that. I think that
I do.
I think that Bernie just doesn't, I don't think he comprehends the game he's in, and he thinks it's about espousing these ideas that he says he believes but doesn't really live by, like you said, having 3 houses. And Steve earlier making this tongue-in-cheek remark about how is it possible that this socialist is really only after money? And the socialist approach to politics is the same as the frat boy who realizes that if he says he wants to listen to a young woman's problems and really empathize and hear her, that this will be an effective strategy as well. And so it's not because he really wants to hear the problems, and it's not because Bernie's really a socialist. I think it's a method. I think it's a method for acquiring power and wealth.
Yeah, and just to wrap it up, Steve, the president of the United States is chief executive.
Yeah.
That's a job, and it requires hours, and you have to sit at a desk, and you have stacks of papers that you have to sign. You don't get to just flit around the country and talk to a bunch of young kids and have them worship the ground you walk on. Now you actually have to make decisions with consequences and have a record. And as most people know by now, during his entire time in the Senate, I think Bernie Sanders got 3 bills passed, and one of them was to name a post office, and the other one was, some kind. And the other.
Hey, now don't step on my episode this week.
I won't. Only to say that he's not a serious guy, and I think you're absolutely right. He doesn't want to win. He wants to be perpetually running.
He's the Pat
And
Paulson.
at his age, how much more energy does he have for that? I think I'd like to finish. Scott and Bill said pretty much everything I'd want to say. So let me finish this segment the way I opened it by addressing the Bernie bros out there. Listen, I understand your frustration, and I understand your support for Bernie Sanders, because when he rails against the established interests, he's got a lot of good points to make. Now, I think every single one of his solutions for these very real problems is absolutely wrong and would just make everything worse rather than better. But that's where our policies differ. I will give him the respect due to somebody who rails against these problems that disproportionately affect the young people who disproportionately support Bernie Sanders. That said, every time Bernie is actually presented the opportunity to actually take down somebody who is from the establishment or is privileged, instead, he is deferred to them. What does that tell you about your guy? I think it says he doesn't want to rail against the establishment. He wants to be seen railing against the establishment, because when push comes to shove, he backs down every single time. I think he's taking you for dupes. Do you really want to be taken for dupes? Something to think about. And that is your right angle on that, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. If you like content like this, you can become a sponsor of it. You really can. Go to BillWhittle.com. Click on that Become a Member button. We would love to have you on board. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.